Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends. After missing the last survival while I was on vacation, I'm back today with a video that goes over the new Christmas survival event, featuring the first playable, but not collectible, character in the game, the Red Gobbo. I'll go over the basics, the featured characters, and then do some analysis on the best characters to bring along. Tacticus Ambassador and friend, FMG, has helped me immensely with this video. I've left his referral code here on screen as a thank you. Hopefully by now people are familiar with the game mode. You start with a protagonist character and 4 other characters of your choice, with their rarity capped. You fight waves of increasingly difficult enemies, getting upgrades along the way. The power-ups fall into 5 camps. Stat power-ups enhance the character that picks them up, granting extra hits, health, or armor. It's worth trying to save the armor power-up for the characters that has the health power-up because of how those two interact. Shield power-ups give a shield boost to your new characters. These stack over the course of the event, so on day 1 shields start off small but become fairly significant by the end of the event. The healing power-up heals a character back to full health. The bomb power-up generates an explosion that damages every enemy in a 3 hex radius. You can save these power-ups and the damage increases as your rarity increases. The last type of power-up is the reinforcement power-up. When one of your characters inevitably dies, you get offered a selection of 3 of your remaining troops to choose from. You can re-roll that selection once for free, and extra rerolls cost you a reinforcement point. In other survival events, there was a 6th type of power-up that allowed you to refresh an active ability, but those are not available this time around. That active ability refresh was the linchpin of many strategies, and its absence changes how the event plays out. This time around, we face the orcs. We have the usual selection of grotts, storm boys, orc boys, grot tanks, and orc characters in later waves, but we also have a new type of enemy, the large squig. I've talked about them on my patch video, but as a quick reminder, they have a 3-hit attack and they have a chance of bouncing when they are attacked, which can move your units around the map. The squigs are reasonably tanky for their rarity and they do not suffer from battle fatigue like the other orcs. I was going to include a section with tips on how to beat the last wave, but as you can see on the screen, this time Snowprint has decided to make it truly impossible. With almost 600,000 health, the only way to kill one of these is to drop a reinforcement onto its head. In that regard, the reinforcements drop in the central area, so if you manage to lure the gargantuan squigs to the central plateau, you might be able to take some with you. In any case, stacking all of the power-ups on a single character can help you clear the waves up until the 15th. One wave that is particularly deadly is wave 10, the last wave at epic rarity. 5 squigs and 5 boys. They can do a lot of damage and kill weaker characters if you are not careful. Try to make sure you are prepared for their arrival. This is the only chance we have to play with a legendary hero of the Grot Revolution, the Red Gobbo. He has 2 hits, physical damage, and a reasonably high damage stat but quite low armor. The first few times you play with him, he's a bit squishy and can get overwhelmed by an incoming wave. Once you've completed all 20 missions and he gets his health and damage increases, he becomes reasonably tanky and actually pretty strong, an ideal carrier for all of the power-ups. Even more important than his stats are his abilities. His active, explosive presence does a large amount of blast damage and can be used repeatedly with a cooldown of 10 turns. That cooldown is reduced every time a grot is defeated. This counts both enemy grots as well as your own, so with the appropriate team and strategy you can use this active almost every turn, and using it every other turn is really quite easy. The ability is able to one-shot or severely damage most enemies on lower rarities. Once you start to get into the higher rarities, or where the orc characters spawn, its utility starts to diminish. The passive called Die Revolution also fuels explosive presence. Anytime a non-grot unit adjacent to the Red Gobbo is defeated, you summon a grot in its place that immediately attacks an enemy. Note that works for both your defeated enemies as well as your characters or summons that happen to die next to the Red Gobbo. On top of this, every time a friendly grot is defeated anywhere on the battlefield, it deals explosive damage to all adjacent grots and all adjacent enemies. These two abilities radically affect the gameplay. First, Grots are great for you. When they're defeated, they can take their attackers with them, but if they are bunched together, the moment one dies, all go with them. Also, you can try and kill as many non-Grot adjacent enemies as you can in order to get extra summons that distract the enemy AI. The usable characters for this event are the Xenos characters. For the higher ranking characters, I will rationalize why I have rated them so highly. As a general reminder, the traits that make a character good in survival are repeatable summons, being able to kill more than one enemy per turn, and or being very resilient or having self-healing. First up in the really good category is Imospekh. Imospekh is probably the best character for this event. If you have high ground, he can easily clear 4 to 5 enemies every turn in the early to mid game. Once you get into the character waves, Imo will probably die, but he buys you the time to get there comfortably. In fact, he is so good he enables some often subpar picks to work. Since he clears waves so well, he will give you the time to call in waves early. I like to start him on Hex 1 as he tends to kill 2 to 3 Grots from there. Then I park him on either Hexes 1, 2 or 3. For Hex 3, if he has friends on the 2 blue X's, nothing can get to him in close combat, and he has high ground from every hex around, plus the grass for cover. Any Grot tanks that spawn around can only attack in melee instead of shooting. Another great use is to put the Red Gobbo as bait. When Imospekh overwatches the enemies, new Grots are created. Next up is Snotflogga. He kills most things on his own, brings repeatable summons that are better than usual because they explode, and lets you avoid battle fatigue. Snot's just absolutely amazing. Next up in the greater good tier is the Parasite of Mortrex. It's a shame that the character has just been released because not many people are going to be able to play with him. The Parasite is really good here because the summons are able to take a lot of punishment. Appropriately, Sho rounds out the greater good tier. I hopefully don't need to extol the virtues of Sho in this sort of game event. He summons lots of drones that are really useful at picking off enemies and also distract their attentions. In the good tier is Aethana. She's a really squishy character, but a lot of the time you are just a tiny bit short of killing stuff at your same level. Aethana's damage boost takes you over that line, and she's incredibly mobile with her 5 movement and flying trait. She's really good at picking up power-ups and a really good partner for Imospekh. Next up is Gulgortz. He's really tanky, gets you some distractions on a critical turn, and can clear 2 things per turn through his passive ability. I tried stacking all of the power-ups on him, but he works less well than a maxed Red Gobbo. Next up we have the Winged Prime. This guy is almost in a subcategory of his own, as he makes the other Synapse creatures work really well. You have to aim for the narrow window where your character doesn't kill the enemy straight away, but the gaunt that gets spawned through the Winged Prime's passive finishes the enemy off. Sometimes the enemies are automatically within that narrow band and it's really easy to make this character work well, but sometimes you're not and then the Winged Prime dips in value. Depending on your roster, you can certainly build around him. Next up we have Hollan. Hollan's summon can do quite a fair amount of work at the rarity you have him, and when Hollan dies you get an extra character and can play with 6 when Hollan comes back through his blip mechanic. The extra HP from Hollan's passive improves automatically with rarity even after Hollan is dead, which makes him a great choice for a starting character. Finally, we have the Patermine. This rating only really works if you have a Winged Prime in the team. His self-heal can make him survive longer than he otherwise would, and when he overkills stuff, he kills enemies with battle fatigue really well through his own passive ability. It's hard to get a good active out of him and you don't really get that many Gene Stealers. However, his passive and innate healing makes him reasonably resilient for this game mode. Up on screen here I've left the sort of average or adequate characters and the poorer characters on screen. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time going into them, but I'll leave these slides up on screen with some text descriptions next to each character's portrait so that you can pause and read these in your own time. You might disagree with me, but hopefully this still gives you some starting insight in terms of approaching the survival event. Okay, that's all I've got for this video. There's still a couple of days before the event itself, so hopefully it helps you prepare your roster in time. Bye for now.
Bye. Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi.